Welcome to the Bleep Midlife Bulimia with guest Lisa Arnold, portrait photographer and podcaster.
Hello, everyone out there. I am Lorianne. I am the host of Bleep Midlife Bulimia, and I am so pleased today to have Lisa Arnold on with me. She is a portrait photographer and a podcaster. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. This is such a joy.
So I'm going to start with the first question, which is what inspired you to become a photographer?
What's really funny? I was about 17 and I got this little used camera, and I knew nothing about cameras. I knew nothing about anything, but I did realize it had a timer, which that's how little I knew. I didn't even know they had timers. So I thought, oh, I can take my own picture. And it was awful. Everything about it was off. The lighting was off, but it was kind of this really remarkable experience. And then I just wanted to photograph everyone. It was just this whole, even then it was about being seen, even though I didn't really, the words didn't formulate in that way. It was just so cool, like, oh, I could be seen any way I want. And then, like every photographer, I started shooting weddings, which was fun. I had a really nice time. But when I was living in St. Louis, one of my brides contacted me, and I always describe her as being like typical Barbie beautiful, really beautiful and funny and sweet. I mean, she was truly just the whole package. And she called before the wedding and she was crying because she just knew she wasn't going to look good in her in her pictures. And at that moment I thought, oh my gosh, there's no one immune. Like, my first reaction was, does she not see herself? But then, of course she does. But she, like most women, sees what she thinks are her flaws. So anyway, I gifted her a bridal portrait package. I said, just come on, we'll just play. Bring your dress. If you don't want to wear that, I'll just wrap you up in a white sheet and we'll just play. And to see her transform from when she first walked in, which, by the way, she brought her mom for moral support. That's how nervous she was. She was just like so nervous. And then by the time we were done, she was outside in the street in her wedding dress twirling around. And to see that simply from the power of being seen, she felt better. So, I mean, she hadn't seen any of the images. We hadn't even finished yet. But from then on, I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to show women their beauty, whatever that means for them, and men too, their beauty, their strength. I want to show them who they are. And so I became a portrait photographer.
That's interesting that it's almost, I don't know, I would probably equate it that taking the test is that anticipation. And you're saying, let's come and let's play. I love that because it takes away that stress, that worry.
Yeah, somewhat. At least in my mind, it made me realize we're just going to have a nice time. It's not about sit and smile or look this way or look that way. Of course, I direct my clients certainly because I want them to get the results that they want, but it's more really about that being seen. And I didn't have that question in my mind as that question. It wasn't formulated yet. But over time, I knew there had to be a way to show people who they are. And so I would ask them things like, how do you want to be photographed? And I realized soon that didn't make any sense because, one, if they knew, they wouldn't need to hire someone, right? We all have cameras. And then for two, the answer for a lot of people was, I don't want to be photographed. And so I needed it to be more personal. And then it became, well, how do you want to be seen? Like, what is it about you that you want people to know? How do you want to be perceived? And then from that, I can create your portrait.
And I like that what you were saying about being seen because you're bringing out their being in those photographs as well. We were discussing that, right? You're bringing out the person.
Yes.
Really
Yes.
important for them to see. Uh, The other thing too that we had spoken about, I find interesting, is where you're talking about, you're photographing a mother, or even speaking about, I love that story about,
Yeah.
the mother and the daughter. If you don't mind telling that one, because I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
It is. It is important. I have the opportunity to photograph primarily women, not solely, but it's usually women. So sometimes it'll be mothers and daughters. And of course, there's always a dynamic, right? It's always interesting to work with mothers and daughters. But sometimes the mothers will do everything right. You can tell they're being intentional. They want their daughters to know how wonderful they are. And so they'll tell them they're beautiful, they're so important, and they can do anything they want, all the right things. And the daughter will soak it in because it's her mom, right? And then she'll see her mom get a glimpse of herself in the mirror. And she'll hear her mom say, "Oh, I hate my whatever, fill in the blank, right? My butt, my legs, my hips, whatever. Myself. I hate myself, my being, my body." And I just can see the daughter just absorb it. And the mom is doing everything, she's doing everything right. She doesn't even know. She has no idea because she doesn't realize how she's been fed the propaganda. She doesn't know that that's what she's showing her daughter. And so when I get to work with them, and again, before they even see the results, just to reflect, all I'm really doing is reflecting back to them the beauty that I see. And it's powerful. It's a really powerful experience. I had this one woman, I don't know if I shared this part with you. The family was walking by my studio, and the mother of the grown daughter knew what I was about, so she just kept going. And her husband had no idea, so he peeked in and he said, "Well, what's this all about?" And I said, "Well, I show women their beauty." And he called his wife back, and she was resistant entirely. And her daughter was kind of like, "Come on, Mom, let's go." And they came in, and she just was shaking her head the whole time. She was like daggers. And I said, "So when's the last time you were photographed?" And she said no. She just kept saying no. And so I said, "Well, what about with your daughter? When's the last time you and your daughter were photographed together?" And she started crying. And she had to leave because my client showed up. But she came back later that afternoon, and she told my assistant, "I haven't stopped crying since she asked me that question." And so my studio is in New Hampshire. She lives in New York. And we just talked, and she booked her shoot with her daughter. And so they came back up and spent the afternoon just laughing and being together and creating remarkable images. And she just booked her second shoot for next month. So again, it's just the power of being seen with respect and admiration, genuinely so, not flattery. It's not about flattery. It's just I get to see people, and then I get to show that back to them. So those experiences are powerful for me.
It is sad about the mothers, and yeah, just a quick sort of, I can relate. My daughter looks a lot like me. I mean, if you look at pictures of her at at her age,
Yeah.
you sometimes wouldn't even, a lot of people say, "Oh my goodness, is that Nikki?" I go, "No, that's me." And the horrible thing is when people will say that, I'm better now, but there was a period where I felt sorry for her, and I go, "Don't worry, you're not going to age looking like me. You're going to be a lot better looking when you grow older." Like, I'm sitting there going, why am I saying that? I think I'm okay. Like, I think I'm pretty.
Yeah.
But I feared her looking at me, because I'm 33 years older than her, and thinking, "Oh, I look like my mom." You know what I'm saying, is that there's that age difference. And so I was trying to ease her, saying, "Don't be afraid, you'll probably age more gracefully than I did."
Oh.
And that was my thought. And I don't have that anymore, but that was my thought. And, that's what we were talking about, being, our listeners are bulimic. That's one thing that we are very, self-conscious, and what we see in the mirror is not what other people see. And, there's got to be a way of, and a lot of that has to do with low self-esteem, with fear of seeing, particularly in the midlife, the changes that go along with it. But we're still beautiful. We just have to learn to see it. So my daughter took a picture of us together at one point. It's just a silly picture, a selfie. I looked at it and I went, I love this.
Oh, good. Good.
And it wasn't, as you said, just to get there, to
Yeah.
get that picture, to see it is, you'll realize it's not as bad as you anticipate.
Right. And the messages we are fed from, especially girls. I can't speak of what it's like for guys. I don't know, but I know for girls, if you drive by billboards, watch TV, movies, magazines, YouTube, Facebook, I mean, everywhere, Instagram, it's just like, I mean, we have filters on our cameras, assuming that we're not going to like what we see, which I'm not saying you shouldn't have filters or shouldn't use them, whatever. I'm not suggesting that, but just we're just taught from a very young age that this is the standard. This is the standard of what's acceptable if you want to be considered pretty or beautiful. And in my experience, we're given the corresponding and conflicting message, you will never be that. But you should still have that as your goal, certainly. And because you'll never reach it, we're here for you. So we have the lotions and the cosmetics and the surgical procedures, so you can at least try to look like you're reaching for the goal. And that's cynical, I realize, but I really do feel like that is the underlying messages, because even the standards which are held up are not real. I mean, it's all photoshopped. It's all, yeah, there's just these messages. And to think that we are taught to worry more about how we look than how we are seen is really sad to me. And so that question, how do you want to be seen, is so much more than let me make a pretty picture of you. It's really about who are you and what do you want people to know about you. So yeah, it's really about each person.
That I like to think of is true art. When you look at the artists, I graduated from art history and I loved it, and I loved the portraits that were painted. And there's a Canadian that was Paul Peel, and there's so many other ones, but I studied him for my thesis, and the paintings of the women, and again how they were seen. So for photography today is the equivalent of what back then they would paint, and just beautiful. And some of the women, would they be strikingly, that Barbie looking? Not at all. But when you look at that, you feel something and you see something. And, that's when you're talking about that. That's what I see what your art, your photography does for people.
Oh, well, thank you. That's such high praise. And it really is the connection between, I won't even say the subject because it makes it so impersonal, but the person and myself. It's just that connection. And it takes a lot. Sometimes if you were to ask them, how do you want to be seen? Well, first they're thinking that I'm asking, what do you want your picture to look like? So they'll talk about what they should wear. And I get it, of course, that's reasonable. But then when I try to redirect and say, okay, but then how do you want to be seen? What is it about you? Their answer so often is, oh, I don't know. So again, it's because we are not told to even think that way. We're not told to think, well, how do you want to show up? What do you want people to know about you? And then that's immediate. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just curious though, because going on with that, I would be curious, do you have any examples of anyone who has answered that and what they came up with?
Yeah, every client. I mean, we don't start until we get the answer. Even for businesses. So if I'm working with a a business client for their personal branding and their headshots, it's equally important, because to me, the portrait is a part of a conversation. It's the introduction to a conversation, right? And so if it's say it's a business, they'll often say, well, I'm an accountant, for instance. Okay, well, what's an accountant look like? But I know what they mean. What they're suggesting is I have this traditional job, so I should have a traditional headshot. And I push back on that, because if we spend time together and I realize, well, they're not traditional, they're really fun and outgoing and creative, well, then why would you show up as you are not? Why would you show up traditionally if the experience your client is going to have with you is fun and you just happen to like numbers? I mean, the two things will happen. One, you'll alienate the people who want to work with someone like you, because they're going to see your image and they won't connect with you. Or the person who wants the traditional accountant is going to meet you and you're like all over the place creative, and you're going to miss that connection too. So who are you? Not just what you do. They already know what you do because they Googled your profession. So they already know that. They need to know what's the experience they're going to have with you. And that's where the conversation leads to, I love people. I love being outdoors. I love having fun. Or I'm really kind of an introvert and I like being alone. I like quiet time, or somewhere in between, whatever it is, whoever they are. It shows up in how they live. So it should show up in their portraits.
I love that. And it's true. I've met accountants who are definitely, it's always like there's that perception, that stereotype, oh, an accountant in your tight shirt and the
Right.
tie, the suit, and everything. And no, I mean, I've worked with a lot over the years, and there were all kinds. Some that came in with a golf shirt, and I'm going, oh, thank goodness, you're not making me fear these numbers coming up.
Right? Exactly. That's just it.
You're giving me a calm feeling. Thank you.
That's just
So,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what we've done though with professions, haven't we? We've sort of stereotypically put them into a certain uh,
Right.
type of place. I know that when I'm putting pictures of my guests up for whatever the case, and there are some that have sent me the ones with the suit and everything, and I go Googling them and I find a different picture and I say, this is how I see you. And I
Yes.
said, I hope you don't mind if I put this one up instead.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. And even for personal, what I consider to be beauty portraits. So when a woman is being photographed just for herself,
Yeah.
not for her business, not for her partner, just for herself, that takes more. It takes more time to get to the heart of it, because it's still the stereotypes that they have to work through if it doesn't apply to them. I had one client come in, and she's also physically beautiful. She's a yoga instructor, kind of quiet, but also kind of outgoing. So I had in my mind how I thought she'd want to be seen. But during the conversation, it became clear she's an introvert, living as though she ought to be an extrovert, because that's the way, when you're 20 something, you're supposed to be, right? And I'll share some of the photos with you of her. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to be photographed in her grandmother's wedding dress, which is the most unassuming cotton, almost like Little House on the Prairie kind of dress. And I realized, oh, she's an old soul. She's just this quiet, tender person who thinks you're supposed to act like this. And so we created some soft, dark, just beautiful, still images. And she's just beautiful. She's just a beautiful woman. Yeah. But it takes time to get there, It isn't just, come here, sit down, let me adjust the lighting, click. It's finding out who they are. And that's the fun of it.
I love that. I love the thought of taking someone and just even bringing that simplicity out. I personally love simplicity too.
Do
So
you?
big thing. Yeah.
Why is that? Do you know why?
I don't know. My mother even asked me, she goes, you were born on the same date as my mother's passing. And she says, and you remind me of her, but you don't at all. She loved fluffy things, and I don't. I don't like ruffles or not big on jewelry, not big on makeup. Uh, and yet my mother was.
Hmm.
So I don't know, love the country living, and yet I was brought up in the city.
Interesting.
It's just, I, it was my makeup, and I don't know where it came from. And I even asked my dad, where does this come from? And he goes, well, if I didn't have a corporate job, I would have lived in the country. So somewhere in
Oh,
his heart, it's the same type of thing. But
nice.
that is how I come across. Uh, I just don't feel comfortable in any other way than who I am and what I'm comfortable in clothes and such. And to try to be someone else is just, it doesn't work. So I would imagine your photography, if you would have looked at me probably 30 years ago when I was married, and that, I don't know what you call it. I wouldn't call myself a trophy wife, but it's kind of like that. Yeah, to be a certain way, dress a certain way,
Hmm.
versus today being who I am. I'm a lot happier today because I'm not doing what I feel that other people uh, expect from me. And I think that that's something obviously that you're taking away too from the person is those expectations of others and who are you and your being, right? Which is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so much fun. And even if they allow me artistic license, and so if I see someone and I think, oh, I would love to photograph them like this, and they allow me to work with that vision, I'm really careful not to transform them outside of who they are comfortable being. I mean, it's one thing to play dress up, and to kind of be outside of yourself, or to be able to wear something you might not otherwise have opportunity to wear. That's really fun too. Because of course we are more than just one thing. So that question, how do you want to be seen, doesn't mean you have to define it so narrowly that it doesn't expand and accept other things. But it should all be you. It should be you. So yeah, the results are just so much. It's so gratifying, honestly. I look at these images from over the years and I think I was able to connect with each one of these people. And it's it's just such an honor to be a part of that, to be almost a conduit between who they are on the inside and who they can be seen as on the outside.
I know that this is going to sound strange, but I really believe that people who are struggling with self image or going through bulimia, particularly those in their midlife, is take the time to do something for you. And I believe that portraits are important as well. I really do, because it's going beyond just what the normalcy is. Okay, I'm going to go get a massage, I'm going to go get a back rub, but this is, it's something that will open up their eyes and really, and with someone like you who's just trying, because I think part of the struggle with bulimia is that you really don't, like I was explaining, you don't see yourself. You don't see yourself as others people see you, but you're not even seeing yourself because you're so focused on being something to someone else
Oh,
and wanting the outside to look at you in a certain way, going, okay, well, this is how they want me to be. But how do you want to be? I think that would be incredibly therapeutic, along with, at the end of it, you get beautiful pictures, but even during the process, I would imagine, Lisa, that's therapeutic for your clients as well.
I think you're probably right. I haven't worked with anyone that I know was struggling with bulimia or any sort of eating disorder, but you can see those same tendencies. Absolutely. I know that if I were to give any follow up question after, how do you want to be seen, with, well, what's your favorite characteristic? What do you like most? There would be crickets. If I were to say, what's your least favorite characteristic? The list would be endless. And sometimes I do that just to kind of like, let's get it all out there and then circle back around. Okay, but what do you like most? And then I'll tell them, you know, I can tell you what I like most when I see you, but I want to know what you think first. And it can be a process. It really can. to be able to just literally to be okay being seen, which is so odd because before we worked together, it's not like I roped them in, they know why they're at my studio, and we'll be sitting there, and we've already had the conversation during the consultation, how we're going to create their portraits, how they want to be seen. And they're nervous, which is, I think, normal, But once I pick up the camera, it goes from just normal nervousness, they become anxious. And almost to the point where they're almost defensive. Everything in their body language, they'll sort of shut down. And you can see them kind of want to just become smaller. And they'll say things like, I don't know where to look, or I don't know how to smile, which of course they do, right? They do it all the time. We were just doing it. We were just having a conversation. But it's that threat of being seen suddenly that they just, it's painful for them. And so knowing that that isn't who they are, that's just how they're feeling, how they're reacting, compared to the conversations we've already had, I know that my goal is to get them back there, to get them back to the conversation, to who they really are. And so that's why the consultation is so important, because if somebody were to come into my studio in that state, I would have no idea who they are, right? I just know this scared person in front of me. So that's the importance of that question and figuring out what the answer is. Because of everything you just said, they perceive what they think people expect of them or what they don't like about themselves, and they think that's all that's out there. And it's just not.
I agree. Sorry, I do have to bring up this funny story that on Friends, where Chandler has to get wedding pictures done. I don't know if you saw that. He could not smile. He says it's silly. And I remember, because my daughter, just to say, she's a photography. She's going for her electrical engineering, but she's done some portraits and that. She goes, Mom, I'll take some pictures of you. And I just, for the life of me, I could not smile, and I felt like Chandler. It's just like crazy. Make me laugh or something, because right now, like it was a Chandler smile. Oh, it was so bad. And even when she showed me the pictures, I was like, yeah, that's Chandler. I just wasn't, and tensed up, and this is my daughter taking pictures. I'm thinking, yeah, but they're going to go out there.
You know what? I remember trying to convince some of my friends, like, just let me photograph you. And they would be like, no. And I think, come on, it's me. But I was at one of my friends' home, and her little girl, maybe 7, 8, I don't even remember, she had a camera. I dove over the couch when she pointed the camera at me. And yeah, her mother was like, see, this, now you know what I'm talking about. And I thought, yeah, I get it. And I haven't always been like that, which is so interesting to me. I used to be one of those weirdos, always jumping in the frame.
You were photobombing before even they came up with the word.
Oh, it was absurd. I look at some of the pictures from when I was young, and it's like, oh my goodness, it's embarrassing. But it shouldn't be, it's just being goofy. But yeah, it is really, really hard, even now, for me to be in front of the camera. I force myself to do it, because I figure if I'm going to ask other people to do it, I should feel what they're feeling. And so I do. And I get it. Yeah.
Just a quick memory, use that word. I remember we did, I guess it would have been 7 years ago now. My parents got all 4 of their daughters, and we went back to Turkey because we'd lived there when we were kids. And my parents thought this is probably their last trip that they can take with their 4 daughters. That's their age. So we went on a cruise, and they were taking pictures. My sister, my second oldest sister, and I, we just were not feeling at our best. My oldest sister, my youngest sister, they photograph beautifully. And Janet and I just don't feel like we do as well.
Oh.
And unfortunately, it was actually stated that as well during the. So we, like, after that, I did not want my picture taken for the life of me, because I felt like. Then I look at them now and I go, you know what? They were just fine. And you cannot compare yourself to talk about the Barbie doll perfect with all the necessities to make you look 10 years younger. She had, and her name is Barbara, so we make the joke of being Barbie. And then my youngest sister just has that natural, long, curly, beautiful hair. And that's what they have. That's their gift. But there's the essence of me and the time and the place that we were at. And, you just have to take that away. You cannot be as photogenic as everybody, but you are as photogenic as you are. And you reveal your being, like you said, yourself in it. And we have to really stop being so judgmental. Like comparison, you can't do that.
Right.
Really
Right.
can't do it. So,
Well, this is what you do in helping women. It's not just the food. So with an eating disorder, it's not about the food. And I am not in any way comparing a portrait, having to have your portrait created with the struggles of an eating disorder. But it is what we perceive.
Mhm.
It's what the importance we put on the food, that the pressure we put on ourselves for the portrait or for showing up, for standing up and speaking about your job, your profession, whatever it is.
Mhm.
We can alter it. We can change our perception. And there is great power in that. With what I do, I have the advantage of having the physical results and saying, see, this is what people see when they see you. And sometimes they'll look and they'll be like, I didn't really know. It doesn't, they never say it doesn't look like them. It's just not how they saw themselves. But the person that comes in with them to order the prints, they'll say, this looks just like you. Because of course it does. It's them. So to be able to see that, but it is the perception. It's the way when somehow standing in front of the mirror, somewhere between our eyes and what is seen in the mirror and reflected back, it just changes in our mind. And of course, eating disorders, of course, it does the same thing. It's just, we pummel ourselves so much.
I would think though, and I've noticed now going back, but even having those, and I'm not saying, but I'm recommending for those people who are struggling with eating disorders to take the time if you can and get the portraits done, particularly by someone like you, Lisa, who's actually capturing the being of the person. And I just feel that is one step away from staring at yourself in the mirror.
Mm.
And I think even taking that one step back is a good step to take.
Wow. Is that what you recommend? Do you recommend that to your clients?
I
to
would
stand in front?
definitely recommend that. Take one
Yeah.
step back by getting your portraits done, because what you're doing in the mirror is you're finding every little tiny flaw, whereas in that picture,
Mm.
you'll see some flaws, obviously, because that's what you're going to do, but it's going to be one step away
That's nice.
from staring at the mirror. Yeah.
That's nice.
So, and I agree with you too. Like, everybody has their own personality and their own being that does come through. And as much as I was joking around about those pictures from the cruise, I could show those pictures to 5 people and they'll say, yeah, this person looks the best. I'll show them to 5 other people and they'll pick a different person each time. They're not always going to say, yeah, your sisters look a heck of a lot better than you, because some people might not like what they look like.
Mm.
It's,
Yes.
why do you think that there's so many couples out there? If every man liked the same looking woman, every woman liked the same looking man, we wouldn't have a lot of married couples out there.
Yes.
So,
And the fact that it's just not about the looks.
no.
It just isn't. And of course, whatever there is, as we talked about, this standard of beauty, this expectation, but that's not what these are. These portraits are not about that. They're just about you. And what, however, so do you want the corporate look? Do you want all the way on the other extreme and to create really intimate portraits? It's really just about whoever you are. One of my clients, her daughter, as a new mom, her grandson rather is just a year old. So her daughter, for the past almost 2 years, has been dealing with a child, either being pregnant or running around, with a child. And she was afraid she'd forgotten how beautiful she was. And so we just got together and wrapped her up in fabric, and she was on the bluffs up in Maine, and just her, this beautiful, strong woman as herself. Does that mean that she doesn't also look like a mom? Sure she does. Of course she does, because she's a mom and she's a daughter and she's a wife. But for that day, she's this powerful woman who was taking on the Atlantic Ocean on the bluffs, and it was just really remarkable, really remarkable.
I thank you so much for that, and I thank you for being here. And I would like to ask, how can my listeners get a hold of you? I know that this is, with the COVID stuff, but there's likely to be listeners that are in your area that may like to get a hold of you. So how would they do that?
Yeah, everything is Lisa Arnold Photography. So lisaarnoldphotography.com, lisa.arnold.photography on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. That's what it is. And as soon as it's safe, I hope to be doing a road trip where I will be photographing generations. I want to create generation shoots, not solely of women, but primarily of women, and to get their stories and to create just a whole legacy of women.
That will be beautiful. And your podcast, where could they listen to your podcast?
That same question that I mentioned to you, how do you want to be seen? As a result of that question, I've had opportunity to hear some really fun, interesting, and motivational answers. So that's what I've created, a whole podcast around that question, how do you want to be seen? And I thank you for being my most recent guest. And I am very, very excited to share your story with my listeners because of the powerful experience that you've had and are having even now. So thank you for the time you took with me as well.
I appreciate being with us. Thank you. Thanks again, Lisa.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
It's so good spending time with you again.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.